Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Just one reason for why we need, it's not a desire, it's a need. The world needs direct democracy right now because politicians are not going to make the decisions that are needed to save the environment. If we have no environment, any of the things that politicians or anybody else is currently worrying about, like economies, won't matter. They won't exist. They won't be an issue. So the world needs politicians in Western countries, and I say Western because they have all the influence. Yeah? All right? The world needs a Western direct democracy because politicians are never going to make the decisions that need to be made. For one thing, they don't have the will. They're being bought left, right, and centre. Secondly, I personally don't believe they have the power, even if they have the will, to do it. By operating from within a partisan system, from within a party in a partisan system, it's all gone. It's all over by then. This is the thing about partisan systems. Partisan systems themselves are responsible for the start of civil wars. You look at any country over the last 200 years and any civil war, what's it been about? It's been about what minority is going to rule them. Whole nations have gone to war with each other to argue about who's going to rule them. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And it's still happening now. It's a joke. It doesn't have to be this way. And that's why I say it's a joke. And that's why I say now that we have the technology for direct democracy and now that the laws are in place for any citizen to be able to implement this in any country in the world under the UN and within protection of international law, which is important. It's important because if you fight them on their turf, and fight them on their pitch and within their rules, then they can't say no. It's as simple as that. You know, I'm no fan of the law. I understand the law. I understand it mechanically. I understand the principles. I use it to a point, but I don't live by it. I will live by the law of this country when it's decided by the people of this country. Until then, I am not a traitor and I'm a patriot. You know, our politicians are selling us out to corporates and it's killing the environment. We're losing 50,000 species of animals and plant every year from this planet. With every one of these animals and plants that we extinguish for life, how many cures for human conditions are we giving up forever? How are we supposed to go forward as a race if all the things we're going to need in the future, if we're actually killing them off ourselves? It's ridiculous. All right? Politicians are not going to make the decisions. They can't make the decisions because they can't prioritise the environment. The reason they can't prioritise the environment is because the only reason they've got where they've got to is by promising large donors that they're going to prioritise their companies instead. Like, I think it was January this year, Obama himself wrote a rider into law, okay, so that Monsanto, this is just absolutely ridiculous. I really hope people hear this because I don't know a better way to make the point. Monsanto produce genetically modified, they call it food, I don't know what to call it. This stuff's dangerous. It's not a derivative of nature. It's something that they're up to, using derivatives of nature. The reason for why the world is starving is not because of lack of food. The reason for why the world is starving is because of corporates like Monsanto and Western wealth. The reason for why the world is starving is because, 80% of the wealth is in the hands of 20% of the people. And those 20% live in the rich West. The reason for why the world is starving is because of poor distribution and poor policy and greed. The reason for why people are starving in the world has got nothing to do with lack of food. So GM, and Monsanto and anyone coming along saying, hey, we've got the solution for world hunger, here it is. It's something that makes more yield. We have more food. It's not going to make any difference. How long have we had GM crops now? We've just had a fucking famine in Somalia that the whole world just watched. We just bloody watched it. We let it happen. We watched it. Yeah? That was last year. Last year. How many years ago were these companies saying that in their poison they had a solution for world hunger? How many years ago did we first hear that marketing? It was bloody years ago. And last year we watched the Somalian famine.
Yeah,
Where
they
was
don't do
Monsanto?
anything with all their wealth to help these people.
Right.
And when they
So
do,
it's they want them to become the guinea pigs for their next batch of frankenfood.
Oh, I think they're just doing that straight on us now. I think they're realizing how passive the UK and American populations are. When I say passive, you've got to bear in mind that from my perspective, protesting is nothing. Protesting is indirect action. Unless it's peaceful national protest, it's never going to... I've never seen a protest achieve anything unless it was national. Never. Never.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, direct democracy means that we don't have to debate with anybody the laws about which we're going to live. We decide among ourselves as a majority how we're going to live, and then we tell each other that, and that's that. No one has a say in it. That's democracy. It would be the first country in the world to have a proper direct democracy where the majority of the people's will becomes law will be the first true democracy of any form that this planet's ever had. Now, I need to go back to politicians. They are not able to make the decisions that need to be made to save this planet because their agendas lie elsewhere. They are protecting companies that are destroying this planet, whether it's through machines for war or through GM products. This is what Western governments are doing. They're doing this. We do live in representative democracies. It's just unfortunate if they don't represent the majority. They represent, as Occupy will call them, rightly so, the 1%, the minority. And these minority have bought the whole system. Incidentally, this is what Thatcherism is, and this is why people in the UK are so angry, and why calls on people in the UK to show respect to somebody who's just died will go unheeded. The reason is this: Margaret Thatcher was responsible for the deaths of thousands of Iraqi civilians, women and children, Kurds in the north. Margaret Thatcher supplied British-made chemical weapons to Saddam Hussein to use on his own people. He wiped out 5,500 people in the first strike with weapons that were made from here that Thatcher sold to him. Now, you know, if somebody wants to tell me I should respect her because she's dead, I'll tell them to fuck off, because there are thousands of dead children around the world because of her policies. You know, Thatcherism has spread. It's Thatcherism. Yeah, when I say Thatcherism, I'm talking about politicians that represent people that buy them. I'm talking about all of this. And I'm talking about the corporates behind it all being the same, being the banks, the food companies, them, and the utility companies, them. The world is ran the way they want it to because they have to go through politicians. If we remove all of that and take that away as a mechanism, then those companies, Monsanto, if they want something put into law, they'll have to sell it to the bloody people. They'll have to get off their arse and sell it to a whole population, and they'll have to justify why they should have such a law in place. To the people. At the moment, Monsanto want a change made in the law. They pay a senator $64,000, I think, at the last strike. Yeah. $64,000 for a multi-conglomerate like Monsanto to change federal law that affects millions of people in just one country. Monsanto can pay a politician to override that, but Monsanto will never be able to pay the country to do that because the country will be affected and the country will be like, no, we don't want your poison in our food. So no, you can't do that. Do you see? Yeah. This is why direct democracy is incorruptible. There is no centre. There's no centre. It's decentralised. There's no opportunity for corruption or bribery because there's nothing to bribe or corrupt.